Today we're going to discover how you're going to nail your audition to be a Pilates instructor. If you're new to the channel, hi, welcome. My name is Lauren if we've not met before. On this channel, I cover everything Pilates related for instructors or want to be instructors beyond the anatomy. So if you're a Pilates instructor, newly certified or not, if you're looking for work, then auditions are going to become a part of your life. Auditions, the word sounds kind of intimidating because in my mind, auditions is like this thing that drama schools do, or like I'm thinking of the movies where they stand in the auditorium and have to like play their violin or whatever to get in. It's not quite like that, but it kind of is. You have to put the spotlight on you for, on average, 10 to 20 minutes. What this says about the industry is that while they like you to have the paper, that's not the important part. A lot of other jobs, they'll see your CV and then they'll have the verbal interview and then that's it, you got the job or not. Whereas in Pilates, a lot of studios also want that extra step to see how you teach because there's something that you can't train. We're going to go through step by step how the recruitment process kind of works for most studios I've seen. With some of the smaller boutiques, it is a little bit more informal, but any studio that has at least a couple of locations are going to take you through a similar process to the one we're going to talk about today. So obviously, step one is you are going to send your CV. If you want to be really ahead of it and skip a step, list your availability. So you can be specific about the hours where you want permanent slots, the hours that you're available for cover. Little tip, if you are really, really looking for work, mention that you're happy to work on the weekends because this is the slot that I've noticed most studios struggle to fill. It will just save you an extra step in the process of them asking you later or writing back because some studios I know won't take you to the next step before they know the availability, which I guess kind of makes sense. So you've sent your CV, you've mentioned your desired availability and your cover availability, and that we're super excited to start working on weekends. What will happen after that is they'll probably reply by email to set up a call with you. Occasionally, I've experienced people want to meet in person as well for a coffee. Absolutely fine. Why not? If you're looking for work, you've probably got time on your hands. And this is where they'll start to run through your CV. So say you're newly certified in Pilates, but you've got other experiences that are relevant to the career. Maybe you were a teacher before, so you're used to managing a group, or maybe you worked in fitness before, so you've got a good understanding of the body. This is your time to showcase that, as well as discussing what got you into Pilates. I think at every single interview I've had, this has been a question that's come up. I think this kind of says a lot about what it means to you, how you're going to teach, what your style is before they've even seen it. So say you got into Pilates because you were a dancer before, they know that you are going to have a strong attention to detail and form. Or perhaps you've gotten into it because your friend took you to a reformer class and you loved it. They're going to know that you're going to bring passion to it. Or maybe you had a background in fitness and they know you've got a good understanding of the body and know how to push your clients who want to work out. So it kind of, whatever your background is or got you into it, that kind of says something about you. They'll also discuss your education with you, whether it was recent or past, what made you go for that education. And I wouldn't be shy about saying that it was the cheapest one. If anything, if it's not one of the bigger names, if it's one of the smaller ones and you say it was the cheapest one, then to sort of admit that actually might work to your advantage to say that, yeah, I didn't have that much money to spend on it, but I really wanted to get into it. And, you know, as soon as I start earning money, I can start doing more education. Also in person, you can tell a lot about someone's aura. It's almost like a first day, isn't it? They might look fine on paper and on the app, but then when you meet them in person, they're just really stiff and awkward. And quite frankly, while you can be mellow, if you are stiff and awkward, this isn't really the personality type that studios are going to want as instructors because that makes other people feel stiff and awkward. And if you're leading the vibe of the room, they don't want their clients to feel awkward or uncomfortable. So try and approach these almost like a chat with a friend. If you're like me and you're very excitable, tone it down a bit, but be honest, it's going to help you in the long run. They're not looking for you to be perfect and ready. They're just doing a vibe check. That is what they are doing. One little tip. If they do not mention the rate in this conversation, if they ask you any questions, if you've got any questions, I wouldn't take this as an invitation to ask about the rates. Yes, by not bringing it up, there is a risk of it's going to be lower than what you want. But if you are looking for work, I would say this kind of beggars can't be choosers, and they're not going to be paying like nothing. They can't get away with that. If they've got 0 instructors, like take that as a red flag and don't even apply. But more likely what it is if they're not mentioning the rates, it's because they're going to negotiate it with you later. And most studios, I know, they want to feel like you're really invested in them. So if you're just asking about money, trying to find the one that has the best pay, that's how that question could come across at this stage, which I'm not saying it's going to stop you getting the job, but it's going to switch their view of you. So they're going to be a little bit more critical about other stuff later on. If it is negotiable, this is actually one of my favorite things about a studio. I mean, a lot of studios do a flat rate. If they're doing a flat rate, that probably means that it's not going to go up. If it's a negotiable rate, that means that even if it starts low, there is room for it to grow. So I would always see them not mentioning the rate as potentially a good thing, that they want to be fair and they offer higher rates to instructors with more experience and better performance, which obviously that's a great thing. You do well, you get rewarded for it. All right, so the second and third step we're going to take together because I've seen different studios do this in a different order. Some studios will ask you to attend their classes first. Make sure that you don't have to pay for them. I would say it's a very red flag if they ask you to come to classes as part of an audition process and don't cover it for you. The studios that do ask for that, it is often because they want to help you when it comes to the actual audition. They want you to know their style so that they don't have to kind of gauge whether you might be a right fit. Because they might see that you know a lot, but they're like, are they a right fit for our studio? This isn't going to be the massive chains, and it's not going to be the tiny boutiques either. This is ones where it's maybe like the sort of smaller chains. Let's put it that way. That I've seen do that. More likely what will happen though is that they will ask you to come for your audition first. And your audition, it might be in a group, so you might be teaching the recruiter and other instructors, or it might be just with the recruiter. And it will often be somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 20 minutes. Sometimes they'll give you guidance, sometimes they won't. Whenever I've done an audition, they've always given me a little bit of guidance, whether they said in a traditional style, whether they've said to use not just the reformer. I had one that was a one-on-one and they said, treat it like it's a one-on-one. And so in that case, I made sure that I asked them about injuries individually and tailored the program to them. So that one was kind of testing my quote unquote improv skills and adaptability. But other studios, it's always like a good thing to sort of say, oh, does anyone have any injuries? But whatever you've planned ahead, you can still do. Just make sure you modify for the injury if any of the class has any injuries. It's a good chance to showcase that. So during your audition, make sure that if it is a group audition that you are engaged and listening to the other instructors. They're not going to test you on your technique. I don't think most studios care about how awesome your technique is or not, so long as you show that you kind of understand the feedback. But I would say that they will notice if it feels like you're radiating a supportive energy or a bored, I want to get out of here, very self-indulgent energy. And obviously as a Pilates instructor, that we're here to kind of service our clients and look after them. So nurturing and caring about other people is actually a part of the job description. Doesn't matter if there are other instructors. It doesn't matter if your part is done. This, I'm hoping, will come quite naturally to anyone watching this video. You clearly care. If you've taken the time to Google and YouTube how to do well, you obviously care. So we're just gonna assume that we knew that already. Now, the biggest mistake, having spoken to several recruiters, that is made in Pilates auditions is people overcomplicate it. And many studios are even writing this into their descriptions, something simple, to just teach something simple. It is quite a common thing for new instructors. They often want to try and show how much they know by teaching the most complicated exercise possible, but it actually ends up having quite the opposite effect. When a class gets super complex, it kind of looks like the instructor is using complexity as a crutch to hide the fact that they don't actually know the basics. It's trying to project authority, but it doesn't actually demonstrate the fundamentals and the mindset behind Pilates. You have more knowledge than your clients because you've been on your teacher training education. They are not analyzing and questioning the simplicity or the complexity of the movement as much as you are. So studios don't need to see you teach the hardest exercise in the world, but they do need to see that you can teach the fundamentals pretty well. Not perfectly, but pretty well. So the things that they're actually looking for: are your cues structured? Are you giving clear instructions without over-talking? Sometimes less can be more. I know it's tempting to try and showcase all of your knowledge in one sentence. I even do this myself sometimes. But just try and hold on to the fact, if you have all that knowledge, they will see it later, but they're not looking to see it now. They don't care. Or they do, but they need to see how you would teach it in a real class. And that amount of cues, if they, of course, maybe you're doing it in an audition to try and show them how much you know, but they're thinking, okay, this is how this person is going to teach in real life. They're going to overwhelm our members if they're saying all these things without a breather. And if this is hard for you, script it out. Know each of your movements, which cues you're going to focus on, and then you can, during the audition, have a little flexibility to add in 1 or 2, but just so long as you've hit maybe 3 per move, you're going to be fine. Another thing that they're going to look at, and especially if you've been on an education that's more one-on-one focused rather than group focused, is your positioning in the room. A lot of studios don't have mics, but even if they do, we use our body sometimes to assist with the demonstration of the exercise. Even if we're not on the reformer, you might show, for example, what the arms are doing here, or I might mimic, and then the other one back down to tabletop. If you're standing behind them, they're not going to see that, okay? And it's not as flowy as it could be, or as organized, if you're suddenly like everyone face the back, and then you're running across the room to be standing at the back as well. So positioning in the room is an important one that I think a lot of people forget. They are going to want some basic anatomy knowledge. When I say basic, I mean basic. Again, I'm sure the sort of person that is watching this video has a pretty good understanding of anatomy. The people watching these videos, from the people who have DM'd me before, are the ones who really, really, really care. That's the general theme I found of the people who have kind of contacted me on Instagram. You do not need to know everything. When I say basic, I mean more being able to refer to the global muscles and maybe reference the diaphragm, the transverse abdomen, the rotator cuffs, but you don't have to go into detail of each and every one. Some instructors are better at that, and some aren't as good at that. I'm actually personally one of the ones who's not as good at that. I'll kind of know where the muscle is, I can know which one I'm thinking of, but I always forget the names. If you're like me, you're going to be fine in this industry. Whenever you get a client with a specific problem, you're going to learn from that. So whatever happens, if I get suddenly someone with a torn serratus anterior, I'll like Google, I don't know how they did that, but I'll like Google exactly where that is, see the purpose of the muscle, and then that often sticks with me. It is like a language. You're not going to learn it all in one go in one day. There's going to be mistakes, you're going to forget things. If they are in your class, it means that they're okay to be in your class. But so long as you're not calling your glutes your biceps, you're going to be fine. I promise you, the only words you'll really need for an audition are quads, glutes, hamstrings, inner thighs, outer thighs, and calves, if we're talking about the legs, okay? You might know loads more than that. You might not even need to use all of those, but you don't need more than that. You do not need to start referencing the tibialis, the gracilis, I can't even say these, the sartorius, and all 4 of the quad muscles. And then flow of the class or the block. Instructors and recruiters know if you are making the class up as you go. They also know if you haven't tried it out on the reformer. This is through things like box on again, box off again. Now, if you're doing box on again, box off again, I'm not saying that you can never do this, but there should be a reason. Maybe it stops you having to change springs as much. Maybe it's so that a certain part of the body can have an active recovery. Or maybe it's because you want to finish the class with the box on. That's fine. So long as it's been thought through, that's going to notice. Same with spring changes. I would say in a 10 to 20 minute flow, you don't really want to change the springs more than twice. Ideally, once for that duration. You can, of course, offer modifications. Next thing that they're going to look for is control of the room. This one I get is a little bit ambiguous. It does kind of encompass some of the things we've already spoken about, like so positioning according to the movement and not over cueing. And it's essentially about feeling confident. It's more about calmness, but things like, for example, backtracking, second guessing yourself, standing still and not going over to anyone during the audition or not speaking to anyone during the sort of audition block, that's going to look very sort of stiff and like you're not controlling the room. So I know that's a lot of information. Don't worry, you are going to get work. Auditions, they are also their own skill in and of themselves. Sometimes it's going to take a few as like your practice rounds to get comfortable in auditions. Even if you're fine in classes, Auditions are a little bit different, but you're essentially just trying to showcase that you've got the base that they need. And I can assure you, sometimes you can deliver a really good audition and just not be the fit for the studio. And that's because sometimes studios are hiring for things beyond just teaching ability, but maybe timetable availability. Maybe they have an instructor already that's really similar to you and they don't want to create that kind of competition. Maybe class demand. Maybe they want someone with a certain skill or background that you don't have. And also a personality fit for the team. Try not to see it as a reflection of your ability as an instructor. Sometimes it's just not the right fit at that moment. And this is what I always tell myself about when I auditioned for Disney, that I just didn't get it because they weren't looking for Princess Anna at that time. And please always feel free to ask the studios for feedback. They're not always going to reply. And even if you don't agree with it, I would challenge you to then, if you do want to work for the studio, try again. I've always progressed from studio feedback on my teaching. I might not have always agreed in the moment, and remember that there are different teaching styles for different studios. So essentially what that feedback has done, it's allowed me to wear more hats. So I feel now, having implemented the feedback, I can confidently teach at more traditional studios, as well as more dynamic studios, as well as mixed equipment studios. I've not gotten every audition, but every time I've auditioned and not gotten through, I've asked for the feedback and then taken it on board. A little story time here. I got told at one studio that I wasn't traditional enough. And in my audition, I'd been very group instructor vibes, as if it were kind of like a legs, bums and tums class, like kind of everyone by name, which is a good thing to do, cracking a few jokes, being like very pumped and spirited. Not a bad thing at all. But then I actually re-auditioned for that place. I toned it down completely, a far more, I'm your teacher, not your bedside comedian. And it's allowed me to have that tool in my box for if I want to teach that way. I still try to incorporate a little bit of humor, but I don't have to use it as a crutch as much in a lot of my traditional classes. So with all that being said, if you are preparing for an audition or want more tips, feel free to write to me on Instagram at Lauren Chapel Howdies. I'll always reply. I check it way more often than I should, and I actually love hearing from you. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. It is a free way to support the channel. And if you've got any other instructor friends, don't forget to share this video with them. And I will see you soon. Thanks a lot for watching.